Chelsea's $138 million move for Morgan Rogers represents one of the largest single-player investments in recent history, signaling a significant shift in how the club calculates the price of potential. Analysis of the transaction reveals a heavy 30% market premium applied to the base fee, a figure directly tied to recent international tournament exposure. At the center of this valuation is a 22-year-old winger whose age profile and physical traits are now being evaluated against that price tag. Relying solely on traditional financial modeling to judge this transfer often leads to the conclusion that the fee is inflated beyond any reasonable market value. In Enzo Maresca's architecture, this fee reflects the cost of acquiring a specific tactical component required to make the rest of the team's movements possible. Maresca's arrival marks the beginning of an era defined by a rigid, system-first tactical philosophy. The foundation of this system is an asymmetric 4-2-3-1, which reorganizes the pitch into specific zones of responsibility. This structure demands constant vertical progression while in possession and transitions into a high-intensity pressing shape the moment the ball is lost. Implementing these complex demands requires players to execute micro-roles within the intense environment of Stamford Bridge. When a system has such unforgiving structural requirements, the market value for a player who fits the specific micro-profile increases, regardless of standard baseline rates. While listed as a left winger, Rogers does not provide width. He operates as a dedicated inverted winger, moving inside to influence central zones. During the build-up phase, Rogers' movement pattern draws him away from the touchline and into the central left half space. This central movement forces the opposition's defensive block to compress horizontally as they attempt to shut down the interior passing lanes. This movement serves a specific purpose. It creates the necessary conditions for the attacking right back to find space on the far side of the pitch. As the defense collapses toward Rogers, the right flank is left entirely vacated. Exploiting this engineered space requires a teammate on the opposite flank with the speed to attack the void before the defense can reset. Ultimately, Rogers' valuation stems from his capacity to act as a spatial decoy, creating the opening for the team's primary offensive threat on the opposite side. Maresca's strategy relies on inviting opposition pressure deep into the midfield to create space behind the first line of defense. This tactic requires players capable of receiving the ball while surrounded by multiple opponents in high-pressure zones. This map illustrates the density of opposition markers in the central zones, all focused on forcing a turnover. Rogers uses his ball-carrying strength to navigate these congested areas, successfully moving the ball through the initial layers of the press. Breaking this first line immediately puts the attacking team into a numerical advantage as they enter the final third. There are very few players currently available on the market who possess the physical profile to perform this role consistently. Within the current framework, Rogers acts as a pressure release valve, allowing the team to maintain its vertical progression under duress. When the team loses possession, the left winger's role shifts toward heavy defensive responsibility. Rogers is tasked with being the first trigger for the press, initiating the hunt for the ball deep in the opposition's half. We can see the winger node here, moving high into the opposition penalty area to disrupt the ball carrier's decision-making. This initial movement acts as a signal for the rest of the team. The fullbacks immediately push high in coordination with the winger's press. The entire defensive integrity of the system depends on the winger making the right decision at exactly the right time. If that initial press is bypassed, the high defensive line is suddenly vulnerable, leaving vast areas of the pitch unprotected. In this scenario, the fullbacks are caught high up the field, unable to recover in time to cover the red transition zones shown here. Because the macro system is so reliant on Rogers executing this role without error, the club is concentrating significant structural risk into a single asset. Chelsea's high-stakes approach to systemic acquisition stands in contrast to the transfer models used by other top-tier clubs. Al Hilal's acquisition of Somerville operates through a model of raw financial overmatch, prioritizing high-level individual output. Their dominance in the league allows them to focus on match winners who can perform regardless of a rigid tactical structure. Benfica's loan of John Duran represents a different path, allowing the club to evaluate tactical fit before committing to a long-term purchase. This model provides the club with an operational window to test a player's integration without the risk of holding a depreciating asset. While Benfica uses contract structures to mitigate risk, and Al Hilal uses capital to absorb it, Chelsea is betting that tactical hyper-specialization will justify their investment. This brings the focus back to the €138 million valuation placed on Morgan Rogers. Chelsea is aiming for a long-term operational runway by securing a player tailored to their manager's specific spatial requirements. This split screen captures the core of the gamble. The significant financial commitment on the right is balanced against the tactical impact visualized on the left. If the system fails to protect against Rogers' defensive limitations, the 30% market premium will no longer be seen as a necessary cost of doing business. The success of this transfer now depends on how well opposition analysts can find and exploit the structural gaps left by this highly specific tactical lever.